Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Well, everyone's a special guest because they took the time to be on my show. I'm joined by Khai Nguyen. Now, I met Khai on campus as a member of the GMU Toastmasters. And then lo and behold, I was like, who's this young speaker that, like, wow, he takes over the room, just carries himself just with a presence that's bigger than life. And come to find out, this young man is the world's youngest distinguished Toastmaster as of July 1st of this year. So even during the pandemic, he has made an accomplishment. And as you know, or if you are familiarized, Toastmasters is international. There's clubs all over the world. So to be the youngest is quite the feat. And so I brought him on this podcast because, you know, obviously as a learning experience, I just want to ask his experience about his journey with public speaking, and obviously this like really renowned record of being the youngest in this space. But before we get into the questions for the episode, Khai, can you give the listeners a little bit of an introduction of yourself?
All right. Hi, Philip. So my name is Khai Nguyen, and basically a lot of people know me through my public speaking adventures. I started speaking when I was extremely young, so I'm currently 19 years old, and for the past, I want to say, over 10 years, I've done some form of public speaking, whether that's just a small thing that I do extracurricular-wise, or if I bring it into a competitive space, or even now in Toastmasters where it's a little bit more professionally developed.
And so you have that mixture of being a student currently right now and these leadership organizations out in the community. But bring us back to that journey. You said, I mean, it's funny, you're young, such a young man, you're only 19, and you're like, I already got like 10 years experience. So bring us back to the early days. Like, what got you into this space?
All right, so my public speaking journey actually didn't begin with public speaking. I want to say when I was 5 or 6 years old, my dad signed me up for an acting class. And at the end of this class, we had to do this big performance, and I still remember it was called Back to Broadway. And I only had around 3 or 4 speaking lines, and I butchered these lines. Like in the video, you can see that I was extremely nervous. I even messed up at a point, and I was playing with my clothes, and it was just a huge mess. But because I was only 5 or 6 years old, the audience just kind of laughed it off, and the show did go on, and it was a huge success for our entire club. But after that experience, my first official introduction into public speaking, I was actually brought to an organization called Young Speakers Club, and it's taught by a very respectable teacher by the name of A. George, and this is where my public speaking journey began. So Young Speakers Club has a program that's around 8 weeks long, where they teach you all about the fundamentals of public speaking. And this is where I truly was introduced into how to stand up in front of a group of people and give a speech or a presentation or a little bit of comedy or anything like that. And from that experience, I was able to really just build on top of it. And even though it was a curriculum designed for 8 weeks, I had my dad sign me up again and again and again and again. So I was actually in this 8-week program for a span of 2 or 3 years. And I want to say this was my true introduction to public speaking. From there, I didn't do anything that competitively until I went into 8th grade in middle school, and I was introduced to a club called Model UN. And this is where I took my public speaking background and I focused it into international relations. And I was able to compete almost once a month. And because of the number of speeches I was giving over a weekend and doing it once a month, I was actually able to grow as a speaker a lot during this time frame. And that leads me now to today, where after I turned 18 years old, I was eligible to join Toastmasters International, and where I am today, where I give speeches almost every week, and I really develop myself and the people around me by helping them grow in their public speaking, their communication, and their leadership. So that is a very short description of my journey as a public speaker.
I mean, that was amazing. And it's just crazy to say, like, from what I heard, it started, your journey started from a place of like a lot of people where, you know, when you ask someone and you see the tip of the iceberg, you don't know their experience started from a place of embarrassment or what the day one was like. And then you just over time, like I would have never thought that would have been your journey or that's your start, because you put in so many hours into, you know, honing this craft of talking. When did it start to click for you that was like, wow, like where it was, you know, the fuel of you talking to people, you started getting rewards back, like I'm good at this, I feel like I could do something with this, this makes me happy or whatever? When did you start getting that vibe, that feeling?
So the feeling of success actually didn't come very early on. I mentioned that I did a lot of public speaking when I was younger, and I started competing in Khai Nguyen when I was in 8th grade. The part of the story that most of the time is left in the shadow is in 8th grade, I actually went to my first conference, and I thought I had this public speaking background, and I thought I would do really well, but I actually did an award. And this continued to my second conference, and my third conference, and my fourth conference. And it wasn't until the end of my 8th grade year where my dad talked to me, and he said, look, I personally, as your dad, I think you're spending a lot of time in Khai Nguyen, and you aren't really getting a return of investment. So we're going to send you to one final conference in 8th grade, and depending on how that goes, we'll go from there. And it was at that conference where I actually was able to get my first award, and that really just sparked something in me where I thought that, hey, maybe if I really tried, I could be good at this. And so once I got into high school, I started doing a lot more preparation. I did a lot more learning in public speaking and Khai Nguyen and everything. Outside of just the fundamentals I learned from Young Speakers Club, I started learning a lot more advanced strategies, which is what really helped me grow and to the speaker that I am today, where I've been able to win multiple awards, and it's very rare for me to actually now compete without getting some type of recognition at the end.
And I definitely see that, like it's almost like you're like the, what's it called, the Kobe of speaking, where you come very prepared, very and I'm not saying rehearsed, but very like fine-tuned, and it seems like it's not on the cuff. It's like something that you put time in, and yet your time yields those things. Like behind the scenes, you know, like the hours of practice coming for that moment of like a 7-minute speech. So can you, like, for the listeners, maybe young or old, take us back to, or take us to, what are those hours of preparation like before a speech look like for you? Those behind the scenes, those hours leading up to that 7-minute and short talk that you probably do.
So a large majority of my experience, like I said before, it comes from Khai Nguyen, where our speaking time ranges anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. So it's extremely different form of public speaking compared to what I do nowadays, which is Toastmasters, where we speak for 5 to 7 minutes. But because I had such a strong background doing impromptu speaking, I was never actually trained or learned really how to write a speech and go from there. But what I do want to say is, in preparation for a 5 to 7 minute speech, I've been able to learn how to prepare for a speech. And the way I do this is I first get all of my information down, how I want to structure the speech, and I just dump everything out. And because of my impromptu speaking background, I take these bullet points and I just speak for 5 to 7 minutes. From there, I record myself, and this is the way I get my natural speaking voice as compared to what I sound like when I write. So by recording myself, I can transcribe it and I get a more realistic and natural feel to my voice. And what I do from here is then I start to hone down my writing and my speaking and make sure that each of the words I say, I actually mean it. And after I have a clear structure on what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it, that is where I begin to look at what type of hand gestures match the content I'm saying, what type of body language do I need to exhibit during this part of the speech, what emotion is trying to be portrayed, and how can I match my facial features to reflect what it is I'm saying. So really taking it step by step, by first getting content down, and then the next draft will be, okay, what hand gestures can I do? And then the next step will be, okay, what facial structure should I do? And then the next step, like, how can I deliver this better? Just breaking it down individually is how I would recommend you go about preparing for a speech that you're trying to almost perfect.
Now, along with the Distinguished Toastmaster Award, obviously there's outside leadership opportunities that you've taken full advantage of. And so when did it start to translate for you, or you say, okay, obviously I'm not just doing speeches the main goal is not just doing speeches, but I'm also going to do like, leadership club, leadership roles and really get involved on the other side, because as we know, to become a distinguished Toastmaster, it's not just doing speeches, right? Like you have to do a full program of other things and have a leadership role or be an area, director or something like that. So when did you start saying, okay, now that I'm in this structured organization such as Toastmasters, I'm not only going to just focus on public speaking, I'm going to focus on the full curriculum to be a leader?
So addressing the leadership aspect of Toastmasters International, I actually came into Toastmasters thinking that I would become the world's youngest DTM. Oh. So just by having the outlook and the insight from the start, I was actually able to prepare myself accordingly and make sure that everybody around me knew so that they could help me get to where I am today. By making it clear to everyone else and making a defined objective, you're actually able to much easier find what it is you're trying to do. So in terms of leadership for myself, I started actively pursuing leadership opportunities in high school, where I was trying to become the president of our Model UN club. Now, unfortunately, I did not actually become the president or the secretary general of my Model UN club in high school. I was actually the vice president, but my relationship with the person that did become president was very strained, and what actually ended up happening was through my ability as a leader, despite not being the president of the club, most people in the organization recognized me to be the leader and therefore would listen to the instructions that I would give them. So it doesn't matter necessarily about the title that you have, but rather your ability to communicate and your ability to inspire everyone else so that your organization as a whole has an objective to push towards.
I love that. So why? I mean, I saw that you did and that's like a lot of, setting goals and then working your way backwards. So you already said, I wanted to be a distinguished Toastmaster. By setting that, you were able to go backwards and say step one, step two. But why was that even something that came across your mind as something that you wanted to do? Just in general, like, why did you set that as one of your goals in the first place?
So this was really a goal for myself because I really liked public speaking ever since I got into it and I started seeing that I could do well in it. So becoming a distinguished Toastmaster, it was really just for my ability to prove to myself almost that I could take the skill that I had developed in high school, which is not that professional of an environment, but reorient these skills to a more professional field with the hopes of one day being able to speak professionally, to be able to give keynote addresses, and to really share with everyone else how a small middle school and high school activity that I did was able to really push me towards professional objectives that I was trying to meet. So really the Distinguished Toastmaster is just a title to me, but rather what I do now that I have a DTM is share the experiences that I've learned with not just middle schoolers, not just high schoolers, but the professional community around me and really help them grow, because I believe that just because some of the skills I've learned were from when I was younger, there is an older community that can still learn them, whereas the skills that I've learned from the older community, I can still relay them to the younger community that I'm still a part of.
I love that. You found, like you said, like you feel like you're that bridge between generations and bridging information. And I definitely see that. Obviously, has it been like, I wouldn't say intimidating, but just weird, like walking to a lot of rooms and spaces where you're the youngest and, just having to, I'm not saying have a chip on your shoulder, but just I feel like you're having to prove your worth or prove your competency, or at this point, you're just so confident in your own ability that you're not worried about the room?
So there's a quote actually that says that there are two types of speakers in the world: those who are confident, or those who are not confident when they're giving a speech, and those who are just lying. To this day, I still believe that every time I give a speech, I am still nervous. I know I may not seem that way, but the energy within me still recognizes the fact that I am nervous every time I give a speech. Now, addressing your specific question, when I walk into a room, being the youngest person, do I feel as though I have to prove something, or if I need to demonstrate some quality just because I am younger? Yes, unfortunately, I do feel that judgment. But as soon as I speak, I feel like people are very accepting and recognizing the way I say things, and then they see that, yes, this quote-unquote kid is a strong speaker, and we should welcome them into our organization because of the skills that he already possesses. So it's not necessarily a detrimental thing just because of my age, but I feel like it is something where I have to speak at some point just to make sure that the entire room recognizes that despite my age, I am a confident speaker, and I am supposed to be at a level that I am today.
100%. I mean, I think that's just like, as a person of color myself, just in general, right? There is such a chip on your shoulder about proof and all that. But at the end of the day too, I think that when you come with it and you have this, like, able to display your skills, sometimes your skills speak volumes rather than your outward appearance or what you appear to be to the world. And so eventually, people that they'll just jump on board and either, not say fall in line, but, I guess, like you said, welcome you into a space because you show that you're competent. Or if they don't welcome you to a space, sometimes if you're the really confident person, you're like, I don't want to be there anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like then I'll have nothing to prove to you. I know in my own, I have the skills. And so where has this skill in speaking and leadership and all that stuff, where has it, I guess, intersected with your personal life or bled over and you're like, wow, like, because I'm so good at this, when I do a classroom presentation, it's like cake, like where have you seen this affect your life outside of this space?
So outside of the space, I definitely do feel that my ability to communicate is out of the norm for a lot of experiences. Like you said, there are classroom presentations where I've been able to not necessarily be the most researched on whatever it is I'm supposed to be presenting or the most knowledgeable, but my ability to communicate what I have researched and how to really communicate these different things, it helps me in that manner. For example, I am part of the George Mason University Honors College, and we are all as students supposed to do a presentation on something we've researched on our own interest. So in my example, I did do this project and I did do some levels of research, but I definitely do feel that other students in my class and in the honors college, they definitely were more researched than me. They definitely knew their topics a little bit better. But at the end of the day, I was actually able to win the Community Choice Award. And I believe this is due to the fact that my strength as a speaker was able to communicate the things that I did know. So that's my example.
Yeah, you finesse, man. I got it. You're like the guy in the group project where you show up and you're like, man, the other people, the quieter people may have done, like you said, done the research, but the way that you convey and move the audience, you're like, people listen. And I've always thought about that too, about the 1-2 punch. And I was just on something the other day about how important communication is. Like, what good is if you have all this knowledge if you're not able to articulate it and communicate it? Like, some people have the most brilliant minds, but if they don't know how to put it either on paper appropriately with their writing skills or how to speak it, or talk about it, then it's only going to stay in their head. So it's like you get half the game if you know how to communicate. Like, that's like really, really a gem right there. And you kind of, I don't know, your story just reminded me that, like, I remember classroom presentations where definitely as a history major, I probably wasn't the most researched, but being comfortable and answering the questions, like being comfortable answering follow-up questions makes you sound a lot smarter than what you are, and it definitely elevates whatever, you're working on. And you spoke upon your leadership skills about, leading groups, and you spoke about how people listen to you even when you were the vice president, right? So what have been some just, I guess, intangible leadership qualities that you think you built over time that even regardless of the title, people come to you and view you as a leader?
I think leading by example is something that's a little bit not addressed enough. I truly believe that leading by example is something that we should be encouraging a lot more of our leaders to be doing. But I think the hardest part about public speaking or communicating to anyone as a leader, as a speaker, or in any environment is to really channel your passion for a topic. I think if people see that you are passionate about something, then they will want to believe you more. So my ability to communicate comes from my ability to push my passion through either the camera when I'm speaking online or in person, my ability to really show that this is something that I'm passionate about, whether I'm talking about public speaking, whether I'm talking about anything that I'm talking about. But because of the way I can talk to a group of people that I'm leading to show them how passionate I am, it kind of brings out the passion within them. And I also have the ability to recognize why somebody is in an organization. So yes, not everyone may be in your organization to be you exactly, but being able to recognize why they are here and adjusting your task for them so that they can become and meet the objectives that they have set for themselves is the way to really inspire those people to work with you to all meet your objective and their objective and the objective of the organization as a whole.
I love that. So I'm going to ask a challenging question. And how do you still infuse that passion into a topic that really doesn't, like, you really don't care about?
So for myself, there are times where I have to speak about things that I may or may not be interested in. The way that I personally push my passion through is to find something about that topic. And if I can find a personal story that I've experienced that has a relation to this topic, or if I can just build a story around the topic and communicate through a story, then it's a lot easier for me to put in some type of passion. Because if you think about it, the most basic forms of public speaking, the earliest forms of public speaking, were just people telling stories. And that is a way that we've still grown up to obtain information. If you think about when we teach children through stories. We use Aesop fables, we use nursery rhymes. These are all stories that have a core message behind them, but because they're a story, they're memorable and they have emotion and passion that we can put through them. So I think using that, we're able to talk about the things that we may not be passionate about, but we can adjust them so that we can still deliver the message and the education part of the speech while still providing an entertainment aspect.
I love that. So can, and maybe we're going to do a quick pivot, but how do you convey that passion and all that in regards to public speaking, where I realize a lot of audience engagement, it feels different. It's a different vibe when you can see the audience in their faces and read body language, all those nonverbal techniques. How do you feel like COVID-19 has like really threw a wrench into that and maybe even made you change, your game or your approach?
So obviously, reading your audience is a very important skill to have as a speaker, as a leader, or anything like that. And because of the virtual environment we're in, we can't necessarily get that auditory feedback from people. We can't necessarily get a visual feedback from people if their cameras aren't on. But after a while of speaking, at that point, you just have to assume that the audience is reacting the way you want them to react. And if you approach your speech or your lesson accordingly, then you're able to make it seem as though this is how you're supposed to be reacting, and the audience will naturally fall into that response. So if I tell a joke, and if I leave that pause, the audience will know it's for a laugh. But if you tell a joke and you proceed on because you don't hear a laugh because of the virtual space that you're in, then even if they are laughing because you've proceeded on, their laughter is cut short by yourself. So really understanding how you want your audience to respond, and then leaving that response time in your speaking, then you're able to almost push the audience into the direction that you want them in and get that response that you were looking for without actually receiving it.
I love that. Like, so I guess you put in gaps on purpose to elicit responses. So and this is curious, when you're writing a speech, whether in person or not, do you put like pause, like tell you like in parentheses pause to remind yourself to stop at that moment to, give space for the audience to react, or not?
So when I give my speeches, it really depends on the level in which I am trying to do something. If I am doing a major competition, then I will have to do everything that I've ever learned. And what this means is, I said before how I focus on the writing, then I focus on the hand gestures and all of these different elements. So that is how I prepare to do a speech visually with my body language. But verbally, I also do have a process. And what this process looks like is I will go through the speech one time, notate with a vertical line. This is where I am pausing, right? Mm-hmm. Because when we write grammatically, we have commas, we have periods, and we are generally taught that when you see a comma, you should pause for a second. When you see a period, you should pause for 2 seconds. But I believe that when you're speaking to inspire or to entertain, there are going to be inherently additional pauses that you have to put in. So I completely ignore all the commas, all the periods, and I put in these vertical lines where it's going to notate that you are going to pause here. And because I have it notated, I can do it the same way every single time I practice, so that when I have to execute, I can. Going on top of this, I will also bold the words that I need to emphasize. I will italicize the words and the phrases where I need to speed up, and underline the parts where I need to slow down. And because of all these individual notations, by the time it's ready for me to compete, I know exactly how the speech is supposed to be delivered. I know the words, I know where the pauses are, I know the vocal elements, I know the physical elements. And because it's so refined, I am confident in it.
I love it. Do you test run it? Do you test run it on front, like a fake, like a pilot audience, your dad or your parents, or you do it by yourself?
So this is actually a really good question that I think a lot of people do as they move into a more advanced level of speaking, and it is the evaluation portion of your speech. So getting feedback from people is always going to be good. I don't want to put it out there that say that getting feedback is not a good thing. But I think it's very important to note that selective feedback is very important. Right? So, for example, when I was competing for the International Speech Contest in District 29, where I was able to make it to a district finalist level, I actually had given this speech numerous different times, whether that be at the George Mason University Toastmasters Club or at the other Toastmasters Club that I'm part of. And inherently, all of those people are going to want to give me feedback. And a large majority of their feedback is going to be good, but some of it isn't going to be that considerate. So what I recommend for speakers to do is to do 3 things. First of which is to take just loose feedback from everyone, right? So you can give your speech wherever it is, you can give your speech and take that feedback from everyone and just sit down and say, okay, I will try this, I won't try this, I won't try this, I will try this, right? So that's the first step I recommend everyone doing. The second step I recommend is to find a group of people that you really trust. So for myself, I call this the Council of Khai, where upon this group of people, I have those speakers and my friends that I have a lot of respect for. So I have a Toastmasters mentor, I have a contest coach, I have my dad who has helped me all this time through my public speaking journey, and I have 2 of my best friends that I turn to when I need to make sure that something is actually funny if pulled out of context. So these 5 people for me compose the Council of Khai. And what this means basically is no matter what they say, no matter what I've been taught in the past, I will 100% consider their advice, and I will, no matter what it is, try it, right? So that is the very selective feedback that I will most definitely do. And the final thing I recommend to all speakers is record yourself, and most importantly, watch the recording of yourself. I know a lot of people record themselves and they hate the sound of their voice. They hate the mirrored look of their face because it's not what they're used to seeing. But you have to record yourself because you are going to be your strictest evaluator. And because you record yourself, you know exactly where those mistakes are and you know how to fix them if you watch your recording. So because of that, I'd say those are the 3 groups and steps that I take to really craft my speech and to take feedback from other people.
I love that. So do you do like a full body video, not just your face, like stand up and really stand up in a space and show where you're walking around in a space when you set up these videos for yourself to video yourself?
So when I video myself from my waist up. For myself personally, because of the speaking environment that I was first competitively in, which is Model UN, we speak for 30 seconds to a minute at maximum. And because of this, I'd say the weakest part about my public speaking is my ability to use space. Because obviously, like, I can't be walking around in a full stage for a 30-second speech. It's not ideal, it's not practical, and it's something that just shouldn't be done. So now that I give 5 to 7 minute speeches, using the entire floor space is something that I've had to work on a little bit. But in terms of myself and reflecting on myself, I really look at those things that make me strong as a speaker. My hand gestures, my vocal elements, my facial expression, my vocal variety, and these different elements that I know I can really perfect.
Nice. So, I mean, kind of just jumping, I'm always random tangents, but now that you've hit one of these, like a really remarkable landmarks of being a young, distinguished Toastmasters, what is something now that you set your sights on next? Because obviously the journey of Khai, I love that, the council of Khai, man, that's pretty dope. I might jack that for my next rap album if I ever drop. I'm just joking, I don't have a rap album, but I love that name. That just sounds like a dope click, like the council of Khai. I'm really gonna gravitate that. But what's next for you, man? Like what now that you've hit this achievement, what are you setting your eyes on to keep you hungry, to keep you goal-oriented, especially when you hit landmark success, such as like high rewards? What's next?
So for me personally, I struggle with learning by myself, right? So if I read an article online on how to be a better public speaker, the actual information that I'm retaining from that is extremely low. Where instead I feel where most people have commended me on my public speaking is in my ability to almost perfectly execute the fundamentals. I have very strong hand gestures, if I say so myself. I have very strong vocal elements, if I say so myself. And all of these different things are what I learned from when I was back as an 8-year-old kid from the Young Speakers Club. And the reason why I've been able to perfect these skills isn't because those are the only things that I'm working on. It isn't because it's what I read about the most. It's because of the environment that I put myself in is one of education. So I believe that my ability to teach other people is where I've been able to grow myself. Because if I try to explain hand gestures to a younger student, then I myself have to look at, okay, why am I doing this hand gesture, right? I know naturally that this is what I'm supposed to be doing in this situation, but why, right? And because I have to do that self-evaluation before I teach someone, I have a deeper understanding of the things that I'm doing naturally and can therefore apply it elsewhere. So in terms of your question on where I see myself in the future is part of the things that I've already am doing. I am currently very active in the Northern Virginia Model UN circuit, where I am a very popular judge, meaning that I judge at a lot of the high schools where I used to compete at. And because of those judging experiences, I'm able to give individual feedback to almost all of the kids that I'm judging. And on top of that, I am doing a lot of private tutoring where I can tutor those kids on how they can improve as speakers. And most recently, I am also thinking about starting a YouTube channel titled Stand and Speak, where I'm going to be just giving out the information that I've learned in the past free online on YouTube, just because I want to better those other people that want to see the things that I've learned, to grow from my own experiences, and because my self-reflection of these things is going to also make me a better speaker. So I think in terms of my journey in the future, it's going to be a lot more training and a lot more improving of myself and everyone else that I have in contact.
Well, that's dope, man. I'm definitely going to subscribe already. You already got one subscriber. If you ever have a YouTube channel, I definitely love when I see people I know have their own creative endeavors, especially YouTube. I love to just randomly subscribe and see their videos that pop up on my YouTube feed and watch them every now and then to see, oh, wow, I have a direct connection to that video or that content. So I'm looking forward to that. So I did surprise you. I did say, I had some random structure, but I do have a part of the show. It's called Shot for Shot, where you get to ask me any random question as it relates or not, and I get to ask you any random question. Do you want to go first or I go first?
Philip, go ahead and go first so that I can come up with a question.
All right, so I'm looking at the avatar right now of your image for this, this podcast recording, and I see martial arts. So can you tell me a little bit about your martial arts journey and maybe just how does that cross over at all to what you're doing?
So martial arts has been an extremely big part of my life. I want to say equally so as public speaking, which is saying something because I've been public speaking for such a long time. But I've also been doing martial arts for an extremely long time. I started off doing Taekwondo when I was younger, and this experience later made me switch to Wushu, which is a Chinese form of Kung Fu. And that later led to me doing Wing Chun, and I've done a lot of different smaller endeavors over the years on various different martial arts. But in terms of this picture that you see right here, this was actually taken in, I want to say 2017 at the United States Wushu team trials. So the United States has a Wushu team that goes and competes at international competitions. And in this specific competition, I was actually able to make the US Wushu team. So that is where you see this picture is from. In terms of how this relates to my public speaking is evidently as a martial artist, there is going to be a side of my personality that's extremely aggressive and it's extremely determined and focused. And I believe that is something that you can see in my ability to communicate, and it's something that you see in my speech pattern and the way I reflect things. It's almost aggressive as a speaker. That is something that I've been told in the past, which is where my lack of comedy, I want to say, comes in because of just that part of my life. But I also want to say that Wushu has been an extremely big part of my public speaking career because in Wushu, I specialize in doing a lot of forms. And what this means is that you have to build a form, you have to perfect a form, and as boring as it is, you're going to have to do that form hundreds, if not thousands of times before you compete, right? So this concentration and this dedication towards one thing is seen in my public speaking, where I'm able to work on one speech for an extended period of time and not be bored with it. I know how to break down a speech into individual elements and perfect small elements before I even attempt the whole thing as a whole. So I think Wushu can be seen in how I speak, and it's really influenced the person I am today just as much as public speaking. So to answer your shot.
And also, man, you just have this competitive spirit. I feel like you just don't do stuff just to do it. You do it to win. Like, it's like, okay, I'm going to take martial arts, but also compete. I'm not going to just talk. I'm going to compete. This is my next follow-up. Random. It's still a shot for shot, but like, now, like, is everything like not rooted for you? But do you like that? It's like competition is rooted in a lot of things you like to do.
So yes, competition is extremely rooted into the way I was brought up and the people that I've chosen to surround myself with. And I want to say this started when I was, 4 or 5, where I started swimming on my summer swim team. And because of those weekly competitions at such a young age, I learned how to compete, how to be in front of people where all eyes are on you. I learned what it means to be a part of a team, how to cheer on other people around me and really grow that competitive spirit inside me. So yes, a lot of the things I do to be the best, because if you're not gonna push yourself to be at that level, then why bother do it, right? If you want to learn how to be a good public speaker, you're going to get those skills exponentially faster if you compete, because you're going to have to hone in so hard into all of those specific things you're doing. But if you do something for fun and for leisure, and I'm not saying I don't do things for fun or for leisure, but because of my competitive nature, I find fun in competing. I find fun in trying to perfect something, right?
Yeah.
But I truly believe that if you compete in something, you will grow in that area, whether that's public speaking, physical activities such as martial arts or swimming. If you compete, you will grow a lot faster than those people that are there for exercise or for fun or just for experience.
I mean, I agree. I think that you're right. Just to take away from it, but like I used to do powerlifting meets, right? And I could train and lift weights just to lift weights. But if I had a competition, it exponentially made me target, like I have to hit these numbers to win. So therefore you train to win, and then therefore you're going to accelerate in your growth. So I do agree that competition, when you have a targeted competition goal, whether that's with yourself or with against another competitor, it does make you work harder to and grow faster than if you're just doing it for just, for the hell of it. So I definitely agree. That's crazy. All right, your question for me.
All right, I'll make one final statement and then I got a question for you. So my final statement is that competing also gives you a time deadline, right? So by setting that deadline, you have to meet all of these requirements before that deadline, and that really helps keep you focused and on task. So that's the last thing I'm going to say about that. My question for you, Philip, is, so you have this whole podcast, Positive Filter, and you know that I'm planning on starting my own creative outlook and platform on YouTube. So what is the hardest thing that you found in your experience doing this podcast? What is one thing that you would suggest or recommend to anyone else trying this way of communicating?
Anyone that has creative content, whether it's YouTube, podcasting, Instagram, whatever, is don't focus on following, focus on content, focus on yourself, and focus on the journey for yourself, regardless of an audience. And the reason I say that is I've been podcasting for 3 years. And I remember like my first episodes, be lucky to get like 20 downloads, or whatever. And I'm not saying I look at numbers to measure my success, but when I started off, I read a statistic that said that most podcasts, because there's over 1 million of them, that, your show's not going to be super unique. Probably someone out there in the world has said something very similar to what you're doing. So it's about your individual journey, is that most podcasts die within the first 6 months or after or before if the podcaster doesn't get to 10 episodes. So when I started podcasting, all I said to myself was, I'm not going to be a statistic that has a podcast that dies in 6 months or after 10 episodes. I'm going to make it to 10 episodes for myself. I'm going to make it to past 6 months, regardless of the external, audience. I'm going to make this for myself and share it. And I'm sharing it because it's fun for me and whatever, it's for myself. And so I charge anyone that starts anything creative such as YouTube, set a plan, as you know, set a recording schedule and stick with it regardless, like stick with it consistently and consistent content regardless of the feedback that you get. And the following will come, the consistency comes, eventually you'll get an audience. Like if I said to myself, I'm going to release an episode every Monday and Friday and just keep on going. Eventually the audience or whoever that you share it with on social media will get used to that pattern of you releasing an episode on Monday and Friday, whatever, regardless of, of that following. And then organically be comfortable sharing it with your family and friends. Don't be embarrassed. Like, oh man, should I like plug myself? No, now plug yourself with your friends. Say to your friends, a mass email, hey, I just started a YouTube channel and I would really appreciate if you subscribe. So I would charge anyone starting anything creative, be consistent, do it consistently, regardless of the growing or the following that you receive. And then also be comfortable sharing it with family and friends to get that initial support within your circle, and then just keep on growing that. So I would tell it, for you, Khai, like if you want to do your YouTube channel, set out the different videos, like, at least I'm going to make 10 videos. I'm going to release the episodes or videos at this, these landmarks, and just keep doing it regardless of the likes and the comments and the engagement. Now, I also would say that if you do start getting likes and engagement, follow up with those. That's how your audience is going to grow. So whoever gives you some love, say thank you, or whoever gives you love in the comments, always respond to the comments, and that'll grow your following, but do it regardless. Let's say you release that first video and it only gives you 150 views. You're like, dang, that's not what I want. Who cares? Keep going. Go to the next video. And go to the next video after that. And then eventually, you know, like those consistent YouTubers and video, they'll get like thousands and thousands of engagement, but they weren't getting that from day one. And no one got that from day one. So that would be my advice to anyone. And I think a challenge that a lot of people face, because I think when they start these creative endeavors, they think it's all fun and they think they're going to get instantaneously off their first video all this engagement. And some people get very disappointed to realize that the work that they put in to create the video or to create the podcast doesn't get their instantaneous reward that you thought it would get. So you just got to be consistent.
Okay, I'll definitely take that in heart. I was actually supposed to release I told myself that I would start releasing videos in August, and it's now August 7th, and I told myself I would have 2 videos up by now, but they're not up yet. But hopefully I will take your advice and I will get them up as soon as possible.
Well, I'm going to share another story with you. Like, honestly, you know, with that, like setting goals and just doing it and dropping it, obviously, everyone, you know, I've been consistent with it, but I from start to finish of really releasing my first episode was 6 months. I remember I put on Facebook, like, I'm going to start a podcast, y'all. And then I got scared and I recorded the first episode like 6 times. And I said that in December and didn't release my December 2016 and didn't release my first episode till April 2017. And it was because of negative self-talk or, oh, this is not good or whatever, or, you know, whatever. And I had to shout out to my boy, Sam Nang. He positively trolled me. And I might have to do that to you, Khai, where he kept on saying stuff like, he would hit me on Facebook like, can't wait till Positive Philter comes out. And I'm like, yo, stop, bro, stop. Like, stop. Like, he was like, Positive Philter is going to be the best podcast. And he kept on like doing it so much in a public platform that if I chickened out, that looked like really bad. So my man, I called him positively trolled me, is that he like was getting me jump started. And, you know, it was that similar thing. Like everyone has like, yo, I got this idea. I got this content ready to go. And they hold on to it. And I was like, yo, just drop the thing and then drop the next one. So, you know, it's not going to be perfect when you first start. As I said, for my own journey is that like, I legit had an idea to have a podcast and didn't take the courage to do it for like, I don't know, quick math, from December to April. I just sat on it. I sat on a recording. And so I tell other people too, like just pull the trigger and just do it and then move on to the next video and you'll get better and you'll get better. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect at first. And your audience, as I said earlier, it's going to grow with time when you are dedicated. But if you think you're just going to drop 1 video or 2, that's not going to cut it. You got to do it consistently. It's got to be like something part of your like habits or whatever. So, and I told people another thing is too, my main mindset is, and this is like anything, regardless if I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 100, whatever, I'm doing this anyway. I literally say that, like, I'm gonna do this anyway. So either you follow me or you don't, I'm still gonna release this joke anyway. And so I think that's the kind of that attitude that I got after a while when I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to drop this episode. And my first, which was really surprising, my first episode, while, you know, it wasn't crazy, it still was well received because I already had my like friends supporting me. They're like, wow, you actually dropped the podcast. So that was cool to see that too. Like my friends have been really supportive, my close people through this whole time. So that's dope. So I guess I might have to troll you too. I might have to be like, hey, coming soon, Khai's YouTube channel. But it's going to happen, man. It's going to happen. Create that content.
Yeah.
So we're at the part of the show. This is a great episode. I learned lots. I actually took notes for myself, you know, the actual tribe. I definitely have my little council too, but I need to make it solidified and give them a cool name like yours. But this is a wonderful podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on it and, you know, share your experiences. It's really motivational. I even took notes as a public speaker for myself. But now is the part of the show, I call it shout outs and plugs. So shout outs means you can shout out, show love to anyone, your dad, your family, your other Toastmaster clubs, whatever. But then plugs are anything where you feel comfortable for the listeners to follow it with you, whether it's their social media or any projects that you're working on. So the stage is set, shout outs and plugs.
All right, so first I do want to say thank you to Philip for having me on to this podcast. It is the first podcast that I've been on, and it was definitely an experience that I enjoyed and I would like to do again in the future. with you or with any other podcasters that may be hearing this. Additionally, I do have to give a huge, tremendous thank you to my dad. Without him, I would have definitely never started acting. I would have never started public speaking. And without him saying that I probably wasn't going to make it as a public speaker, I wouldn't have gotten that first award, which is really what kickstarted this whole journey off back in 8th grade. So I do have to say a tremendous thank you to my dad. I also have a lot of Toastmaster clubs that I've been a part of, that I've given speeches to, that have helped me grow as a speaker, and not just obtaining my Distinguished Toastmaster, but in helping me grow as a speaker. Even though I thought that I was already pretty good, these people have really helped me grow. And those are the people and members of George Mason University Toastmasters, Free Spirits Toastmasters, Tech Tower Toastmasters, which was recently renamed, Sunrise Valley Toastmasters, and all the other Toastmaster clubs that I've been a part of, or the other members that I've truly met. There are 2 people in particular that I really have to give thank yous and huge shout outs to in the Toastmasters community. That is first Wes Rogers, who is my Toastmasters mentor, who helped me become the Distinguished Toastmaster that I am today. He was the first person I approached with this objective, and he instantaneously, after my first speech, said, "You can do this." So he was the first one who really believed and who really helped me get to that point. The second person I have to give a huge thank you to is actually a professor at George Mason University and a member of the GMU Toastmasters Club, and that is Andy Finn. He is the one that coached me through my first Toastmasters contest, and he was actually able to take my experience as a martial artist and really help me put that into words and show like how I can practice with the way I've been practicing martial arts, which is breaking down a speech, looking at very specific things, all those notation things that I was talking about earlier. These are skills that I have learned from Andy and really built upon. So I do have to give a huge thank you to him. In terms of plugging myself, I will say that my personal social media account is probably going to be best if you follow me on Instagram at KAI_5. So again, that is at KAI_5. And be on the lookout for my upcoming YouTube channel, which is going to be Stand and Speak. The channel is already up and live with, I believe, a total of 1 subscriber, who is my biggest fan and my dad, obviously. But go ahead and follow me on YouTube, and I will assure you, by the time you hear this recording, by the time you go over to YouTube and look at this channel, hopefully 1 video will
There you go. I love it. I love it. And I'm gonna put it in the show notes. So you're gonna get some maybe some random subscribers that are gonna go there. So they better go up there and see some videos, man. I love it. And so Khai, thank you so much for being on the show. Please follow this young man's journey on YouTube, but also just in general, what he's going on in regards to speaking and his life. Like I said, he walked into a room and I was already impressed by this young man and just what he can do. Positive Filter listeners, this has been a great episode. Please share this episode with your family and friends. Please like, subscribe, all those good things. It's Positive Filter on all platforms. And if you want to leave a voicemail for the podcast, it's 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Positivity and spreading this podcast is just all I ask. Please engage, share it with your family and friends, and really get involved. I appreciate you, Khai, for being on the episode today, and we're out.
All right. Thank you so much, Philip.
Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity Movement. Thanks for listening.